Claudia Doval is a highly decorated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete, three-time world champion, holding the #1 ranking in the IBJJF for several years. We talk a lot about Jiu-Jitsu culture in this episode, some of the problems that the community is facing, how women still have an uphill battle when it comes to competition, and of course, crayonshis. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Here's Claudia Doval.
Hello, Mini.
Yeah, the champ is here. What's up, Claudia?
What's up? Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm a huge fan of yours. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
First of all, how's your English so good?
Oh, thank you. I don't know. I always liked English. So I took English courses aside from the English we learn in school, but I guess like I liked, listening to music, playing video games, and when I would watch movies, when I had the option, I would put the subtitles in English. So I guess I just ended up getting it better.
Is English taught in school there?
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think most people just study enough so they can pass the class. And most people don't have to use English like on a day-to-day basis. So that's why most people end up forgetting because it's not used. If you don't practice it, obviously you're gonna end up forgetting. Like how we forget everything we learn in school.
Yeah, but your English is perfect.
Thank you.
So what are you doing these days? You're officially retired from jiu-jitsu.
I wouldn't say like officially. I just like I kind of like am struggling with the passion I had once for jiu-jitsu. So I haven't been training much, haven't been competing, but I don't declare myself retired. I might want to compete again someday, and maybe not like a high level worlds and stuff, but like some of the smaller ones or high level in the masters division, so like master worlds. But I wouldn't declare myself retired. Like I'm in a spot where I don't love jujitsu as I used to.
Do you feel like you became a little bit disenchanted with it? Like you kind of let it run its course and now you're thinking about other things now?
Definitely, yeah. Because of like I don't know if you're aware of what happened to me. I gave an interview back in 2020. Because of that, and because I see happening so much in jiu-jitsu, so much, so many girls, so many cases, and I see people turning a blind eye to that. And
First of all, sorry, let me stop you real quick. For the people that don't know, why don't we just let them know a little bit about what happened just to fill them in?
I I don't feel like particularly comfortable like talking about that because there's an interview it's called My Truth by Paola Gianna on, and that's the interview where I said everything. So I if people are like curious about it, it's called My Truth, Claudia Doval, and like they can see the whole thing. It's a huge episode. I talk about a lot of stuff, but like this particular thing, it starts like about 45 minutes in. And
But I mean, we don't have to go too much into that, but I'll just sort of recap. You sort of came out and talked about your instructor and some of the things that happened and some inappropriate behavior. And it's important talking about, not getting into the details, but it's important, I think, for people to know who train, because we tend to put people who are our teachers very high,
yeah,
put them up on a pedestal.
the huge issue with jiu-jitsu because people treat their professors as like God, or they put him on such a high pedestal. And that's a big issue because so many girls have been through the same issue because of that, because they had, like this perception of, their instructors as, such a great human being, such, like a high level person, and that's why so many girls fell prey to their instructors just like me. And you should never put anyone on a pedestal. Like you can admire people, you can be a fan, but never put anyone like higher than what they should be.
Yeah, this is very important because we put them so high, but they're just people, right? They're people who have trained and have more
People.
experience. They've been doing it. Usually they've been doing it longer than you, and they can share information, but they're just people. They're flawed. And on the other side, teachers, if you're a teacher, you don't have to live up to this godlike personality. You can show vulnerabilities. People aren't going to lose respect for you. This is an important thing for people to understand because it's so prominent in our community.
Yeah, and a lot of those professors, like they allow this kind of behavior. They allow people to put them in pedestals, and like that's a huge problem with the jiu-jitsu community. Like
It's like a cult. That's when it becomes like a cult.
yeah, that's what I say. It's the cultish behavior.
You start eating the same thing, you start talking the same way, eating same clothes, same intonation in your voice. It's like it becomes ridiculous sometimes. And this is one of the reasons I never like to be called a professor or teacher or an instructor, because I'm a training partner. I'm here to collaborate with people, and maybe I've trained longer than you, but we're all the same.
Yeah, the term master is a problem, I think. The whole master thing.
Oh
Like,
my
hey,
God.
master, it's I think that's an issue. That's where it begins.
And jujitsu is so empowering. It's the fact that jujitsu works so well and it's so empowering. Sometimes it makes people think they're tougher than they are. Sometimes it makes people think that they can do things that they can't. And a lot of times it lets people fall prey and victim to predators.
Yeah, and it's not only instructors. There's sometimes it's just like another black belt at the gym. Sometimes it's a competitor, and then if you complain like to the higher person, they rather lose the female student, like the blue belt female student, than the black belt high level competitor, even if he's a piece of shit who does terrible stuff. Like I've heard so many stories like this. Like there's a black belt competitor, a guy, he's really good. He does something terrible to the female students, and the professor just like, oh, I can't see it. Like, oh, let him be. Oh, they pretend they can't see it because of like, oh, they don't want to lose the competitor.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. And I think we need to self-regulate that within our own community, because it's just a
It
huge,
is.
huge problem. Just to sort of sum that up, I thought you were very brave, because it's always difficult when you talk about people who have established reputations and have had a lifetime of work, and a lot of people like them. And I know that you weren't trying to push anything too far, but I thought it was very brave of you.
Came to a point for me where I couldn't keep it in anymore because like it was driving me crazy. I had anxiety, depression, all those stuff, and like I couldn't keep it to myself anymore because I had been keeping it for 5 years and I couldn't anymore because it was killing me. So like I say like I had no other option but to let it out.
Yes, and with jujitsu schools, basically, as in America, jujitsu schools on every single corner now. It's important that people, if they're going to start training jujitsu, really vet who they're going to train with, and not just go to the academy that's right down the street. You have to do your homework.
You gotta research, you gotta know who you're training with. You gotta, because sometimes it's not about, the predatory issues. Sometimes it's just like the moral issue, like moral harassment. Like the lower belts get harassed by the higher belts, in not in like a sexual way, but they just treat the lower belts like slaves or whatever. Don't treat them with respect. And many gyms had that, and I actually had that in my old gym. There was a few black belts, but there was one in particular that I remember. He would treat the blue belts, the purple belts like shit, and like he would he would be wrestling and he would be like, hey, blue belt, bring me your water bottle, and it was the blue belt's water bottle, and then he made them bring the water to him so he could drink. And so there was like a whole issue. So like you should never put like the higher belts like in a higher place, like in society, because I understand having respect for hierarchy inside the mats, but also there's a limit to that. But they were treating like they could do anything.
Yeah, it's just bullying, right? It's just being a bully, and it starts with the culture, and it always starts with the professor or the teacher, and it's so you really do have to do your homework and find, because most I find, I don't have any statistics on this, but I find that the first place that you start training is usually the place that you're going to train for a long period of time. It just seems to work out like that. Wherever you start, you kind of develop a loyalty to.
Oh
That's
yes,
why it's so important to figure it out first. Go to 10 schools before you pick one and choose to train somewhere.
there's also the whole creonchi thing, which I think it's absurd, the whole term.
What's that?
where creonte, you know it, like when somebody's training in one school and then they go train
Oh,
in another school, they call them creonte.
oh,
And
right.
it's so stupid because I think the term was first used like years ago. Like, let's say you have an academy, you get someone to train there, you pay for everything. You sometimes you let them sleep on the gym, or you give them food, you pay for tournaments, you give them everything, and then they switch gyms. I think that's where it first started. But nowadays they're calling people creontes, like they go to a gym, they pay for service, they actually paying for it, and suddenly they're like, I don't really like this place, I'm gonna go train somewhere else, and then they go another place and they call them creontes, like if they're
Like a trader.
like a trader. Yes, and I mean, out they were paying for a service, they were actually paying customers, and then they treating them like traders because they chose another service.
That's interesting because that was very big when I started. I'm very old, so when when I started back in 2002, that was a huge thing. Like if you went and trained somewhere else, or somebody found out you trained with another person, it was like it was a huge deal.
Ridiculous, like you're paying for the service, I can pay somewhere else if I don't like the service a lot, like.
A lot of the first Brazilians that came here, I understand the way that it happened, and it sort of makes sense to me now that I think about it, because the first wave of Brazilians that came to America and really fought for jujitsu, and I'm just talking about America, they were doing a lot of representing, right? They had to be very sort of stubborn, I think, because they had a mission to take over the world. And so I think they felt very attached to the idea of doing it their way. And, their names were on the gis. They had this whole mission. And so when people walked against that, it was like you were cutting their heart out and you were a traitor.
Yeah, that's so crazy, like people behaving like this. Like you go to a supermarket and I'm like, this other supermarket has a better service, I'm going to that one. Like the cashier is not gonna hunt you down. Like
It's interesting because I thought that was kind of over with. Now that I saw people cross training and everyone's doing different things now, and training with different schools, and people are learning online now, I wasn't so sure that was still around, but I guess it is, huh? People still
it
talk like
is,
that.
it is. You still have a little bit of that, the whole, creonchi mentality, which is absurd.
Crayonshi. Did you ever do any cross training? I mean, were you training with different people, or were you pretty much only
No,
with one
I
school?
had a fixed place where I would train, but like I would visit places. I never had problem visiting places. And also like because I traveled a lot, so I had to train at a bunch of places. Yeah. You're allowed to go and train somewhere else. I mean, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. Like, oh, I want to train with different people. Like you shouldn't be not allowed to do that. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So how do you feel about how where jujitsu is in general at this point now? I mean, you pretty much used to focus on tournaments in the worlds, and fighting at a high level there, but there's also another world of submission grappling, and there's a big money game out there, right? With people doing different styles of tournaments and different rule sets. Where do you think about how all that is going?
Well, jiu-jitsu like improved a lot. Like I see so many tournaments now paying real money to athletes, and in a sport sense of way, I'm happy that it's developing so much. There's many more girls competing. It's still a lot of inequality in the competition scenery for women. Like you see, for ADCC, for example, they now added a third category, but until now it was only two category for women, which is ridiculous. Like until 60 kilos and then over 60 kilos. Like
Wow.
it, it's ridiculous. Like a two category, and I think men have eight, and each category has 32 competitors, and for girls is only eight. So like it's so unfair. Also, the IBJJF, like we still have one category less than the guys. A few years ago, we had even less. Now the last category is over 79 kilos,
Mm.
which is crazy. But like a few years ago, it was like 74 was the last one. So if you weigh more than that, it's your problem.
And that's not because there's not enough women. It's simply there's plenty of
There's
women.
so many more women now, and we're still so far behind.
Mm.
There's the tournament, the BJJ Pro. It's the IBJJF tournament that pays athletes. So for the black belt adult, men have four categories. Each category paying, I think, 4,000. And a few years ago, women only had one. I mean, if you wanted to get the money, you would have to fight the absolute, so only one category, and you would fight for $1,500 or 1,500 reais. So now, a few years later, they changed it. Now all the women fight for 4,000, while men still have four categories, and all the women have fight in one category. So it's ridiculous. Like if you look at that, like how they treat women and the competition scenery, we're still very far behind.
That's interesting to hear. I don't keep up on this stuff too much. I mean, but I take your word for it for sure. If you're going to line up your year for doing tournaments, like what's the money like? How are you? What are the tournaments costing? What's your cost? Are you getting sponsors? Like, what's the whole sort of workflow for you in order to make it happen and be a competitor?
So the thing is, when I was competing, the tournaments didn't pay any money at all. My last year, the last year I fought Worlds, that's when they started paying the champion only. The smaller tournaments, the opens, they didn't pay anything. I
Mhm.
didn't have to pay because if you win Worlds at black belt, you don't have to pay anymore for tournaments. But if you do have to pay, they are so expensive, so expensive. It's especially if you're Brazilian because they cost in dollars or euros, and it's ridiculous. So,
What's
for
the reais?
example,
What's the reais to the dollar?
it's a little bit lower now, so it's like $1 is 4.8 reais.
Oh,
So,
wow.
for example, a small open would be like $170. If you wanted to fight weight and categories, something around like 230. So that's like half the minimum wage in Brazil
Yeah.
to compete. Or if you compete in Europe, it's in euro. It's so expensive. Like even the tournaments here in Brazil, I think like a small open is around like 200, 300 reais. It's really expensive. So like I didn't make my money from competing. The thing is like I would compete and then I would find a seminar, whatever the tournament was, and like so I could, earn some money and also like pay for the whole trip. Yeah, because IBJJF, it's not gonna make you money. I mean, you get your name as a competitor by winning stuff in IBJJF, but
Is that the model? You build up a bunch of medals and then you open a school and then start to make your money? Is that what most people have as their approach?
I think so. Yeah, they get their name out there by winning stuff. The good thing is now that there's so many other federations like the AGP, like they pay you, and there's other tournaments that are now paying. So I think that's good. Like you get to win those that stuff, and then like you get invited. Sorry, you get invited for tournaments, and then also you can like open up a school or teach seminars and stuff like that.
And you had no interest to go into that world after winning worlds?
I did think about opening up a school, but then like with the whole like falling out of love for jiu-jitsu, I kind of like let that idea in the air. But I did have like an idea in mind about like opening up a school.
So what's next? What are you going to do?
Honestly, I don't know. Like I'm just I train sometimes, but I don't have any tournaments in mind as of right now. Like I don't really have like a plan.
I totally get it. When did you realize that you were getting good at jujitsu? When did you sort of gain your confidence and start to realize like, oh, I'm better than people?
I don't think I ever got that sensation that I was actually like, oh, I'm good now. Because there's always like a flaw. There's always something like,
That's what I love about you. You're so humble. This is what I love about you.
no, it's not. It's because it's like, it's honest. Like, because sometimes you think you're good and then you go to a tournament and something bad happened. I'm like, how did I let this happen? Like, that's not something an athlete should allow to happen. Or sometimes training, like something bad happens at a training and you're like, how did this happen? So you're never like at a point where like, oh yeah,
So, like, let's say you messed up at a tournament, you did something and you lost. Where do you go from there? How do you, when you go back to training, what's your mentality? Are you just angry? Are you just like doing 1,000 drills? What's the mindset?
No, I was never the drill person. I hated drills so much, so I never really did drills. I mean, I would be very sad upon losing a tournament, but I wouldn't, put that into training because I liked training so much. I loved it. Regardless of competition, or I loved training. So when I trained, I just, I tried to do my best in training. And by my best, I don't mean submitting everybody. Oh, I have to win every role. I just, try. I would always like match the person's energy, whatever they gave me, I would give them back. Like if they were training like, cool and stuff, I would train like cool. Like if they came to me like you're crazy person, I'm like, yeah, you're gonna get the crazy treatment. But I always try to train the best I could, like always matching the energy that people gave me.
But was there a time when you realized you went from like just training to like realizing that you were getting really good at it? Was there any sort of like moment of confidence where you took it to the next level?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I had that. Oh, this is the moment. I mean, I knew that I knew stuff. I knew that I was able to do stuff. I understand that I had knowledge of jujitsu, but I never had this moment like, oh yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I don't think I ever had that.
Really?
Yeah, I have a real issue with like confidence because I think it's because when I was younger in school, like I was bullied
Hmm.
for being ugly and
Jesus.
fat. So that had a permanent damage on my confidence that I'm never like too confident because I'm always, like when they say that you get overconfident, like if you fall, the fall is going to be too great. So like I'm always scared of the fall thing because I used to be made fun of in school for like forever. It you know did a permanent damage on my confidence that I'm never like overconfident about anything.
Well, this is I love to talk to athletes about confidence because it's such an interesting thing, and to have it or not to have it plays sort of an equal role to me because sometimes people use that lack of confidence as fuel to train more and sort of fill in the gaps of where they have weaknesses. So I think it can be fuel for the fire, right? Sometimes you can use it, and also sometimes it can work against you if you're overconfident. I'm just so interested that you never walked into matches like feeling super confident.
Oh no, because I got so anxious during matches that I never thought, yeah, I'm gonna win this 100%. Never ever in my life, because
Yeah.
I would get so anxious I could barely move before, because people warm up before the fights. I couldn't because I could barely move. I was always so anxious and nervous. So like I never had like confidence before any matches in my life.
And I would imagine that keeps you sharp a little bit to a certain extent, right? That anxiety sort of keeps you at a heightened sense of awareness. And
Oh
maybe
no.
obviously it worked for you a little bit. No?
The thing is, like, I did win some matches. But the thing is, like, I would have fight so much better if I didn't have the anxiety, because it drained my strength, it drained my energy. Like, I was tired, like, seconds after starting the fight. So adrenaline did like the worst for me. And even though I won some stuff, like, probably the other person too, because
You have
everybody.
7,000 gold medals in back of you.
There's a few. There's a few. I do this thing like 'cause sometimes I would go to tournaments and then like I wouldn't have a match and like because the opens they always had four categories like gi, no gi, weight, and absolute. So every tournament, like the smaller ones I went to, I had four categories. I signed up for everyone. So like if I won a medal but I didn't have any fights, I do this notch on the medal. So like, oh, I didn't really earn this medal, but like this one doesn't have a knot, so I actually earned it.
Oh
So I
my
have,
God.
the medals with the knots are the ones that I didn't actually earn.
Garbage, trash. You didn't earn those at all.
I know, I mean, it's on the wall, but I didn't actually fight for it. Like if I fought for it, it has no knot.
Were you also, I know you do a lot of weight training now. Were you always weight training as well?
I used to until like my before starting competing, I used to like work out and train every day, but it wasn't like a very, focused workout. It was like no no care for aesthetic. It was just like, oh, I want to get strong. And I didn't work my legs much back in the day, so I had tiny chicken legs. Lately I have been mostly just weight training, and then like I'm trying to be more aesthetic.
I mean, it's kind of important to have chicken legs in jujitsu, isn't it? I mean, you got to have mobility.
No, it's so like for example, I always say that for triangles, because people with tiny legs, they always complain, oh, I can't get triangles. I say, if you have tiny, sturdy legs, like it might be harder to get the triangle, but once you get, no one is going anywhere.
You don't have to lock it up, right? Just squeeze the shit out of the.
The problem with me with my chicken legs, because I'm quite tall for a girl, so like I could get triangles, but a lot of people would just slip right through my triangles because my legs are so tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I've watched your matches. You have great hip mobility.
That one, yeah, that one I do have. I do have a very nice hip mobility. Like I can turn my hips like very smoothly and fast when I need to. So like that's a lot of people, thought, oh, you're so flexible. I'm like, not flexible. It's the hips. It's all about the hips.
It's true, right? What do you think about curriculums in schools and sort of, I guess, how people are taught?
I heard that there are some schools that, like they have the curriculum, you gotta follow that. So I don't really know how it works once you're in there. But I think every professor shows like a little bit of their game, what they like to do, and these students might end up like copying them. I think the curriculum is good at some point. So like, because you teach people like what should be learned first, and then like you develop from there. So like to a point, I think the curriculum, like it's good. Like, oh, first week you're gonna learn this, then you learn this, and like you start progressing from there.
Yeah, and what should be sort of learned first? I saw a video yesterday with Giancarlo Bodani.
We dated for a little bit.
Oh, you did?
Oh, that was years ago, 2018 and 19.
Well, that's good. He's very handsome, but he did a video. I was watching it because I've been thinking about. I've been having this conversation with
He was
people
not
online,
humble
and
about it either. He wasn't humble about it.
he wasn't. Oh no.
Oh no, no. He was aware. He was aware.
But I've sort of been having this conversation about how long it should take for people to actually get a black belt, like as far as time goes. There's ever since I've started training, there's always been like this sort of 10-year idea. Like it takes you 10 years to get a black belt. It's sort of been like the general consensus of like when people ask you on average what it's going to take to get a black belt, most people just say 10 years.
I don't know, because there's like a minimum time of belts that you have to stay on. I don't think 10 years like the normal. It shouldn't be like if you're training regularly. I think sooner. I think you could get your black belt sooner. And like people should be, I don't know if the word is judged, but like by whatever their goal is, or however they train. So for example, you get a competitor, so like you're not gonna judge him the same way you judge like that 50-year-old student who is a whatever, a doctor or like lawyer or works in an office. You're not gonna judge that guy that trains just for fun, sometimes 4 times a week, sometimes three. You're not gonna judge them equally, like, oh, there's this blue belt competitor who's beating up that brown belt guy. Like, yeah, like it's different. Like you're not gonna not give that guy the black belt because he's getting beat up by this juvenile super strong competitor who's been training since he was 3.
And one of the reasons I brought up that video that I saw yesterday with Giancarlo was he was talking about what you should know by the time you get to blue belt, the actual techniques of what should be taught first to a jiu-jitsu student. And me coming from a background of more so just fighting and wanting to learn how to fight, I find it difficult to digest the idea that a blue belt should not know how to defend themselves in a fight. Like getting a blue belt without knowing how to deal with punches is a little bit difficult for me to wrap my head around because it's a fighting art.
I understand where you're coming from. I don't entirely agree because I think like because jujitsu it's great for self-defense, but I think it's a sport, so I don't think like a blue belt should definitely know how to block punches, because also I think that once you get good at jiu-jitsu, it's kind of instinctive. Like you kind of know, like the way you move, it's probably gonna counter whatever is thrown at you. But I don't think like that's a necessity. Like, oh, if you get your blue belt, you should know how to block punches and stuff. Because some people just want to train for the sport. Because I think like the self-defense is a bonus. So I don't think
Mm.
that's like a necessity. Oh, you have to learn this by the time you're.
Yeah, this is sort of like the age old argument, right? Because I'm sort of just the opposite. Like the sport is like the bonus for me, and learning how to maybe roll and train with somebody like you is a bonus for me. But for me, like when I go out in the street and I see a big dude, I want to know that I can handle my business.
Realistically, like you don't really fight people on the street a lot. So like it's just like being able to, but never really using. Like I never had to use for self-defense, and I'm so grateful for it because I don't want to fight
Yeah.
anybody. But sometimes I do feel safe, like knowing I can defend myself. Like so, there were times like I was on the bus. It was actually like in the U.S. I was on the Greyhound. You see so many crazy people on the Greyhound. And there was this like crazy, actually crazy guy next to me, and he was disgusting because there was like something leaking out of his ear, and like he was actually crazy. He was like grabbing inside his pants, and like I was, like I was like, I know if I have to, I can defend myself. I just don't want to touch him. I hope I don't have to. So like for me, like the self-defense part of it is the bonus, and the sport is like the good part, because like realistically very few people actually use jiu-jitsu, because there's also situations where you shouldn't, like some if somebody is armed and they come at you, like don't try and fight them. So like realistically it's very few, you see a few people, but it's very few people that actually use it for the self-defense.
Yeah, I totally get it. As far as the sport goes, will jujitsu ever be in the Olympics? You think? You think
No.
it'll ever get to that? No.
Mm-mm. Because from what I hear, in order for a sport to be of Olympic quality, you need it to be practiced in over, I think, I heard something about like 80 countries, which I think it probably is, but you need champions from like at least 40 countries. And like if you look at the history of world champions, you're gonna see a huge amount of Brazilians. In the men's division, you're gonna see so many Brazilians. I think like 95% Brazilians. In the female division, is maybe like 80% Brazilians, and then you have like a few other women who are from other countries. So like the Olympic is not interested in hosting a sport where 80% of the gold medals are going to go straight to Brazil. They're not interested in that. And also like nowadays with so many federations, so many different rule sets, it's not walking forwards, being an Olympic sport, and I don't think that that's necessarily bad. I think jiu-jitsu is very popular on its own, more popular than a lot of sports that are on the Olympic. With those tournaments now where you can get money from them, like if it was an Olympic sport, I don't think that would exist. Like being able like to have so many tournaments where you pay the athletes and stuff.